that ball. so, so old Speed made three errors on that one ball, and Mott scored. Well, Speed had to laugh himself, but it was funny then. That happened 60 years ago, and that is still funny then, and it's still funny to me now.
Dad, you know how they baby the pitchers so much today. They give them 3 days off, and they let them pitch 3 or 4, well, 5 innings to get a game. They put a relief in and so forth. Tell me the story about Guy Morton pitching a doubleheader.
I get a kick out of Guy Morton, as I said a while ago, was on our ball club in Cleveland, and he was a good pitcher, and he could pitch every day. But we was playing the White Sox, I think it was, on the 4th of July. We used to play a morning game and an afternoon game. In fact, we played all day long. We started at 10 o'clock, and we'd play 9 innings, and then we'd come in and have a lunch in the clubhouse, and dress and go back out and start another game at after 2 o'clock. And old Guy, ever who started that morning, I don't know who it was, but Guy was in the bullpen. And ever who started that morning didn't get anybody out. So I looked around, and here come Guy. Guy come in, and he pitched all the morning, and we won that ball game. And we come in at dinner, had lunch and everything, changed our sweatshirt, put on some dry clothes if you had any. And as we started out for the second ball game, now this was after dinner, after lunch, started out, I heard Trish Speaker say to Guy, says, Guy, if I had to use you this afternoon, could you pitch an inning or 2? Guy said, yes, I'm ready, I can pitch. All right, Guy got back down in the bullpen. So ever who started that afternoon, they didn't get nobody out in the first inning. And I looked around, and who was coming in from the bullpen but Guy Morton. All right, old Guy pitched, and he pitched all afternoon, and we won that ball game. He pitched all day long and won 2 ball games. And the point I'm trying to make is, now if I pitch 7 innings, 6 innings, they count the ball. So many. They baby them and pamper them and stuff like that. If the ball didn't shape, they could pitch, but they baby them so till sometimes you wonder whether they are real good pitchers or not. They're so wild, and they're pampered with. Put them out there and let them pitch if they can pitch. They're supposed to be pitchers, let them pitch.
Dad, tell me about you going from Cleveland to the Yankees.
Well, this was 1931. I ended up with Cleveland in the summer, and the ball club released me, and they were going in for young ball players. They got rid of me, Jameson, Fonseca, a bunch of we old fellows. And I went to the Yankees, and Fonseca went to the White Sox. Jameson went to the Phillies, I think, Philadelphia Athletics. But I went over to the Yankees in 1931, and we won the championship in 1932. In 1932, in my estimation, was the best ball club that was ever assembled for that 1 year only in baseball. The news media right now will pick the 27 Yankees. Let's go back and check the records, and the man for man, and everybody had a better year, with the exception of 1 or 2. In 32, than the Yankees did in 1927. We won more games. We did everything better. But the Yankees, 1932 was the best ball club that I ever played on. And I played the World Series in 1920 with Cleveland, played Brooklyn. And then in 1932, I played with the Yankees against the Cubs in the World Series. I was in 2 World Series.
On that 1932 team, how many members of that team are in the Hall of Fame now?
In the National Baseball Hall of Fame, I believe.
Name the players.
I named the players. Let's see, at first base, Gary's in now. I was a third baseman. I'm in now. And Bill Dickey was the catcher. He's in now. And there was in the outfield, there's Ruth, Combs. They're in now. And the pitchers are Gomez and Ruffin. I believe that's 7. And Pennock, too. But all of them off of that one team is in the Hall of Fame, at Cooperstown.
You roomed with Lou Gehrig.
I roomed with Lou Gehrig 5 years, on the road and then spring training. Lou was a great ball player.
What kind of a person was he?
He was great. He was one of the nicest persons that you just want to talk about. But he was a great person. And when he had his fatal disease, I was rooming with him when that started on. We was in Detroit, and he hit a ball, and it like about a yard going over the cement wall in right field. And it hit the wall and bounced back. And he fell at the plate just like it hit a cow in the head with an axe. And he didn't move a muscle, didn't bat an eye, didn't do nothing. So we all ran up there. And the trainer, after about 15 minutes, the trainer got him up and took him into the clubhouse, took him on into the hotel. We were staying at the old Book Cadillac in Washington, no, in Detroit. And he and I used to eat supper together every night. We'd eat all the meals together. So on that night after the ball game was over, I went up to the room to see if he was there, could eat supper. And the trainer, Dr. Painter, had him on the bed and had an old infrared light that had just come out. And he was rubbing his back, rubbing his spine, and I went down and ate supper. I don't know who I ate with, but when I went back up to go to bed, he was still rubbing. Well, I finally went to bed, and I woke up at 1:30 and he was still rubbing it. So I don't know what time he quit rubbing it. But then the next morning, Lou got up and we ate breakfast together. And he had an old red kidney plaster stuck on his spine right below his shoulder blade. And that's it. He went out and played that day. Now they've been out for months. But as far as I can check back, that's when his fatal disease was starting to work on him right then.
Tell me the story, Daddy, about, you remember when Gehrig and Ruth were kind of in a battle against each other for the most home runs?
Yeah.
In the end, go ahead.
I forgot what year it was now. But Ruth and Gehrig was nip and tuck on the home runs. And they were way up around 30, 40, somewhere in there. And a lot of competition between the two of them. But we was over in Washington one day. Lynn Larry was on the ball club. And Lynn was in the ball game that day. I forgot, must have been playing shortstop because I was playing. And Jerry
Go ahead.
hit a ball into the center field in the cement bleachers. And Sammy West was playing center field for Washington on that day. Well, the ball bounded way high and come back over West's head. And he caught the ball, but he caught the ball facing home plate. And Lynn Larry was on first base. And we looked around, and Larry he ought to scored easy. And Gary would have scored easy, but another home run. Well, there was a home run because he hit in the bleachers. But Larry would have scored easy, but he got between about halfway between third base and home, and he turned and come into the bench. And I looked up, I never will forget it. I looked up and I just said to him, I said to myself, I said, he made it to home and back mighty quick. Well, Bill McGowan was umpire, and he walked down there, unbeknownst to all we fellows, where Lynn Larry turned around, and when Gary was on around the bases with his home run, and when Gary rounded third base and passed where Lynn Larry turned and come into the bench, you ought to see McGowan. He was just put on a fan dance, calling Larry out. Well, Joe McCarthy was managing the ball club, and he was coaching at third base. Well, nobody could answer but Larry. And McCarthy come back and run up to McGowan. We all did. What happened? What happened? What happened? McGowan told us, said, well, that's where Larry turned and come into the bench. Well, Gary was out with his home run for passing Lynn Larry. Well, Gary never did get over that, because he and Ruth wound up that year with the same number of home runs. I forgot how many, but they both wound up with the same number of home runs. They were tied, you might say. But if Larry had gone on and scored, Gary would have beat Ruth for one home run. We asked him, Larry, what happened to you? Larry said when Sammy West caught that ball, he thought he caught Gary's ball that he'd hit from home plate out there. It went over his head into the stand. But to this day, I can't figure how Lynn Larry got it confused like that. Because everybody in the ballpark, the ball went halfway up the cement bleachers in center field. I don't know yet, but that's the way he explained it.
Tell me a little bit about, the controversy about Babe Ruth and his home run during the World Series.
You mean pointing to the fence?
Yeah.
All right, I saw that. I saw several historical things that happened in my career, and that's one of them. But don't let anybody tell you that Ruth did not point to the fence, because I was looking right at it, and I was in the ball game. I hit right ahead of Babe. I hit second, Babe hit third. But we was in the World Series, and we had a big tongue lashing during that World Series all the way through. But on that particular day,
why was the controversy, the tongue lashing and all that?
The controversy was over the Chicago Cubs giving Lynn Larry,
No.
no, Marconi a half a share of the World Series money, the division. You see, the ball players buy that money. The club owners don't have nothing to do with it. But Marconi and the fellas on the Yankees were real close because they was on the club with each other for several years. And if it had been for Marconi, the Cubs, in my estimation, would have had a tough time of winning the pennant that year.
How'd it
Because
come?
Bill Jurgens and bought Marconi and brought him in there, and he won the pennant for him. And at least we give him credit for it anyway. And when it come out in the papers that the Cubs had voted Marconi got half a share, you never heard such grumbling and cussing and carrying on as our ball players did. This was about 2 weeks before the World Series. So they call the Cubs cheapskates and all like that. But it come down when the World Series opened in New York, Ruth, the only way they could come out out of the dressing room was right by our bench. And Babe would go up and take his hit in practice and come back and sit right by that runway. You could reach out and touch it, that's how close it was. Babe would come back and sit down right there between the turns at hitting and hit practice. But finally they started out on the field, and Ruth and Gary and Combs and Lazare and Titchy, Pennock, Pipgrass, and all those fellows. You never heard such carrying on in your life. And didn't the one say a word back to Ruth or any of we fellows except Gabby Hardnett. Gabby Hardnett turned around and said a few words, but that kicked it off. And all during the World Series, the Cubs was after the Yankees, and the Yankees was after the Cubs players. And I never heard such language in my life. I didn't know there was that many cuss words in it. But on that particular day, we was over in Chicago, and Buddy Grimes and Bob Smith and Jeff Bush were still after Ruth. Ruth was up at the plate hitting. So after he got one strike on him, and Babe took it. Took up one finger, and Charlie Root was pitching, and he come back in there with the next pitch, and Ruth stuck up 2 fingers. And then he got out of the box, and with his bat in his left hand, he pointed the center field fence. And he was talking to Buddy Grimes and Bob Smith and Jeff Bush all that time. He didn't say a word to Root. And when he pointed with his right hand with them 2 fingers, he got back in the box, and on the next pitch, I got a mental picture of it right now. You fellas have seen a golf ball. I had to take off. Well, that ball just, it was just above his knees, and Babe hit it, and it went right through some trees, loaded with little boys outside the ballpark, loaded with little boys who had come to see the ball game. As the ball went through that tree, the little boys just fell out of that tree, they evaporated. Sam Bird was sitting next to me, and he said, "Look at them kids fall out of that ballpark, out of that tree." All right, Ruth rounded the ballpark, the bases, And when he got to third base, you never saw such a conglomeration of stuff come out of the stands in your life. There was hats, eggs, lemons, oranges, cabbage, umbrellas, everything. And Ruth was letting Grimes and them have it too. And we all were. So the umpires called time, and must have taken, I'll say 15 minutes to clear the field. Took three wheelbarrow fulls of stuff to clear the field before we could start back to playing. Well, I'm going to tell you something that you never heard before. Now, that was the third game of the World Series. So we had a fourth game coming off there the next day in Chicago. So Judge Landis was the commissioner then. And Judge Landis wrote Joe McCarthy a letter that if he heard any profanity on the field the next day, he was going to fine him $500 and suspend him indefinitely. But Joe McCarthy got Judge Landis' letter, and he read it to us the next day before the ball game. That's all. He just after we all got dressed, he read the letter to us. But we went out that day, and you could hear a pin drop. But we beat it. I saw another historical game that I have mentioned, but in the fifth game of the 19 and 20 World Series. See, I played in 2 World Series. In the 19 and 20 World Series, we played Brooklyn. And in the fifth game of that World Series was one of the most historical games that's ever been played in a World Series. Most things happened. In that fifth game, Elmer Smith hit the first Grand Slam home run that was ever hit in a World Series. That was one. And then Jim Bagley was the first pitcher that ever hit a home run in a World Series. That was the second one. And then the third one was Bill Warman made the only unassisted triple play that's ever made in a World Series. And it all happened in that fifth game of the World Series. In fact, I saw 2 historical World Series games. The one that I just told you about, with Cleveland and Brooklyn, and then with the Cubs and the Yankees in the 32 World Series. But
how did Bill Wamby make that triple play, did he?
Now, everybody wants to know how Bill Wamby made the unassisted triple play. Well, I was right there within 3 feet of it. But the Yankees had Pete Kilduff on second base, and Otto Miller was the old catcher, was on first base. And Wilbur Robinson was the manager of Brooklyn. So he sent Clarence Mitchell. Clarence Mitchell was a pitcher on that, but he sent him up to pinch hit. He was a good hitter. Well, we knew it too, and Jim Bagley was pitching that day. And Clarence Mitchell hit a line drive between where the second baseman plays and second base. It was just like a shot. And Bill was playing second base, as I said, and he started towards second base, and he jumped just as high as he could. I thought the ball was gone, and everybody else thought it was gone too, to center field. Well, base hit. So that's the reason Kilduff and Otto Miller was running. So Bill caught that ball. That was out number 1. And then he reached over and made about a couple of steps, and he touched second base. That was retired Kilduff. That was out number 2. And then he started to throw to first base. And I saw Otto Miller coming, and he was just lumbering down that way. he never slowed down. And I hollered to Bill, tag him, tag him. I probably hollered 2-3 times. And Bill looked around. He done had his arm cocked to throw to first base. And he looked around, and there was Otto still coming. And Bill made about, I'll say, 2 steps towards first base. And Otto, I got a picture of him at home, where Otto stopped, and he was dumbfounded too. He thought the ball was gone. And he still tried to get away from Bill. He had his arms down. Well, that wound up, that was a triple play. That was 3 outs. Well, back in those days, you could throw your gloves back of the infield. The infield was good, and